call was to lead teams, to drive teams. And as you said, you need to do it. You need to walk the talk. You cannot learn this on the books, right? When you become a sales manager, it's nothing about it. It is all about your team. Right? You cannot be successful if they are not successful. So you need to think that your job is to enable the success of your people. So at the end of the day, I say this, it's not only about numbers, it's how you play the game.
I love that.
If you play the game and you put everything possible in playing the game and you don't win, it's like you have won. Right? If you win the game and you were lucky, you didn't win anything. You didn't win anything because you didn't learn anything through the process, right?
Enrico, welcome to the show, my friend. Man, I am so excited to have you today.
Thank you, Hassan. I'm excited as well. Appreciate your time today.
Absolutely, man. Well, I just want to talk before we get into the podcast and the show today. It's a privilege to honestly deep and have the conversation with someone like yourself that has the experience of decades in the sales process, helping companies from mid-size to big companies. The companies that you have worked with, Enrico, are more than 50 million plus, but you would work with 10 million, 5 million, the companies I've worked with. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I spent time in corporate for 30 years, and this was really more than $50 million companies since I worked for IBM for a long time. After that, I came into my current role, and in the last 5 years, I served around 25 companies, all ranges between $3 to $180 million.
I mean, wow, just the experience of working with the giants like IBM. I mean, that's enough of proof in the pudding. Honestly, like you already have enough experience to talk about this topic, because this conversation we're going to have today, for myself, I'll be sending it to specific clients who are going to hear to this podcast so that they understand the sales process from someone like yourself, someone that's an expert in the marketplace, and you have the passion of helping businesses that are established with sustainable revenue growth path to leading them to basically specific sales numbers. So talking about that, man, you are now working with different companies, right?
That's correct. Yes, usually I work with 4 or 5 companies at the same time. Yeah, in a capacity that is basically their sales leader. I report to the CEO and I manage the sales team. Many times I have to build it up.
That is awesome, man. And for the people that are listening to this, your path and your experience now, Enrico, I really want to talk about the beginning, your quick story from the beginning to what got you in this position first place. And because I want people to hear the story, and then we'll navigate into the conversation of like specific aspects of the sales process that are going to help companies understand the story better. So please take it from here where, I want you to talk more about your story.
Okay, so I'm trying to not to be too long. I started out of university in 1987. I started with IBM in Italy, and I was in a sales role as an individual contributor for 5 years. And after that, I was moved from Torino, where I was living, into Milan, the headquarters of IBM, to take some staff roles. And this was the first step of a career growth that brought me to start to lead teams after a few years. And I came to the United States in 1997 on assignment. And then after that, I decided to stay here. I covered different roles, mainly in sales. I became an executive in 2001. And in 2004, I entered the division of IBM that was in printing. And I stayed in printing until 2018. During that time, IBM division was sold. I was one of the executives in charge of this joint venture IBM did. And then the joint venture was completely bought by Ricoh, and I stayed with Ricoh another 6 years. So this until 2018. Now in 2018, I decided to leave corporate because I was at a point where I didn't feel I could provide the same type of impact I wanted to have with the people or the customers I was working with. And so I started this adventure as a fractional sales leader, which allowed me to help many companies in different segments in different industries. And I was really amazed by what I learned in corporate that I thought was normal ABC or normal knowledge, but in reality, it is not. So I am today very motivated by what I do because I can really help CEOs to build organizations that are scalable and that can grow with their company, support the growth of their company. So that's really what drives me every day, the ability to impact my customers and help them to go to the next level. Many times also, and then that's the last year, I find people that are desperate or hopeless because they try. I mean, if it doesn't grow, you're not going certainly waiting for someone to tell you something, right? I mean, you try to fix it. But
Yes.
many times they do not know how to fix it. They try and try and try. And then when you try many times and you don't succeed, I mean, then hopelessness comes up. And so I find people that are in those situations, they need very urgent intervention. I'm very glad I can help them. So I think it's really interesting how life has brought me from 30 after 30 years in corporate to what I'm doing today.
That is awesome, man. Thank you so much for sharing the story, the quick pieces of the story. I know there's more to it, but that just shows the audience and the people that are listening to the show that you and Rico have worked the work and talks the talk in the same exact time. Because the questions I'm going to ask you today are based on a lot of the clients that I've worked with, and also in my past journey, and what are the truth and not what's not the truth, what's the truth around sales. Because there's a lot of conversations that we had before this about having a scorecard or just looking at the numbers on a consistent level and, not blaming and taking responsibility. So I can't wait to get into it, man. The first thing that I want to really talk about, based on your journey as a sales leader, what prompted you to become a sales leader specifically for small and mid-sized businesses?
Okay, so first of all, when I started as a salesperson and I was working the Italian market is a small and medium business market. And I saw I could really help people in that environment. Now, at the time I was selling computers, but really there was a huge gap between their perception of what information technology can do and what really the information technology can do, right? They had a very simplistic view of IT. Then across the years, I had the possibility to get into executive positions and leadership position. I managed big teams across a global basis. So I realized that really my call was to lead teams, to drive teams. And as you said, you need to do it. You need to walk the talk. You cannot learn this on the books, right? I mean, and then 5 years ago, this opportunity happened. I didn't really even know what the fractional role was at the time. Now it's very popular. And I found a group of people that had the same values, the same desire to help small and medium business. There is a huge demand in the market. And so I thought, hey, this was going to fit my skills, what I've developed in many years of corporate activity. I could use it very well. And at the same time, I could have people that were looking for someone to help them. So that's really, it was kind of a match of where I was going, where my background, what motivates me, and the fact that in the market that there is a need for this type of skill.
That is awesome, man. And based on that experience, man, are there any specific aspects of the traditional sales approaches that you find, Enrico, that are ineffective or maybe outdated in today's world?
I think that what's interesting is to see that there are some, I call them offenders, so that are really the root cause of why sales organizations are not performing. Okay? And these offenders would not be acceptable in a corporate world because the corporate world couldn't work without that. So let me give you some examples. The one that is, in my opinion, the biggest offender is the lack of sales goals. So many companies operate month by month. They don't have sales targets, or if they have a sales target, it is in the head of the CEO. and no one else knows. That translates in not assigning precise quotas or precise revenue contribution targets to all the sellers. There is no reconciliation between the goal of the company and the sum of the targets that are assigned to the sellers. Sometimes one of those sellers is the same CEO that has a sales hat. Sometimes as a sales manager, very often as a seller, because he or she wants to manage the so-called house accounts. So all this lack of structured sales targets becomes certainly an hindrance to perform. Now, having sales targets is not only about having a number, right? It is about where are you going to get to this target? I mean, what is the revenue expectation from your customers, from your different products or solutions, from different geographies or markets? So there are different dimensions, and that has to be planned appropriately. I would say for at least for 12 months, if not for 24 months. That gives you then the ability to get organized. So that's offender number one. There is a second offender that I believe becomes another pain for many organizations. I call it lack of accountability system. So meaning that people are not held accountable for their results. There is no system that measures that, and there is no management system that supports the execution of those goals. And this translates into basically being unable to hold people responsible for what they have to do, right? So accountability or lack of accountability is a type of pain that I hear very, very often, and can be addressed. You need to have a system, but at the same time, you need how to build a system. It's not automatically created by reading books. So that would be a second parameter. And the third parameter, and I stop there, is the lack of the right resources. So very often, CEOs are not happy with the people they have on board. And in addition to that, they really struggle in finding the right people. If maybe they are in expansion mode. So that's an area where experience in selecting salespeople becomes very handy because, I mean, you can really just decide to hire people based on you like them or not, right?
Exactly.
There are parameters. So having the right salespeople is crucial. If you don't, you can have the best possible system in place. It's not going to be work, but also it's truly opposite. You cannot have the best salespeople without a supporting system. They are going to fail. And so it's important that you do all the pieces.
Exactly.
Otherwise, I mean, you're going to have a car without the engine, or the engine without the wheels, right? So that's really important to understand.
So these are the main challenges that people face, and specifically how to address them is the way you just said it, correct?
Yeah, I mean, yes, it is. I mean, I stayed at high level here, right?
Yeah.
But clearly, you cannot hold people accountable if you don't have metrics for execution, right? And you cannot have metrics of execution if you don't have targets, right? It's all connected. And so, yeah, I mean, it's about my experience and what I see around sales. It's the challenge is all about the execution. It's not too much about the strategy or what you have to put in terms of brain power to develop the approach. Is executing things, right? When you say, hey, we have to do this, then you have to do it. There is no other metrics of execution, but many organizations fail because they are not execution driven. And so things do not happen, or it takes forever to make things happen, right? And so time, I always say that time is not a friend of this organization, because you cannot get time back. You run against the clock. You must have targets in a time frame, right? So in that way, you can measure yourself. If you don't measure yourself, you don't know if you're doing well.
Man, Well said, man. Thank you so much for saying it just like that, because this is like the common challenge that, it's just sometimes really hard to have this conversation with a founder or have a conversation with the CEO. And, my question to you is why do you think that execution is the challenge? Is it a mindset thing? Is it they were not prepared to execute on it? What is that problem? And a leader that is getting into sales, expanding, growing, and not committing to the numbers, not committing to, oh, strategy, this is a great strategy, marketing strategy, sales strategy, this, that. Okay, but executing, what is that problem? Where is this coming from?
It comes, there are two dimensions. First, you need to define the framework to operate within, right? And many times people do not know how to create that framework. So for example, I mean, if you want to measure the accountability of a salesperson, you certainly have to give them a target, right? But that's not enough in order to measure their accountability, because that is just an end result of what they are supposed to do. Since time is not your friend, you need to make sure that they are perform what they are supposed to do. And what are they supposed to do? They are supposed to do a list of actions or activities that range from prospecting in certain cases to participating to networking events, to referral partners, to calling people that showed an interest and qualifying if they are real potential leads and they become the sales qualified lead, to sending proposal, to negotiating, to closing, right? So all those things have to somehow to be measured. If you don't measure things every week and you have a clear understanding of what has to be done that week, then it's impossible. Now, that is the framework. Okay. Then you need an ability to make sure that people in the framework do their job, right? And in order to do that, the challenge is that many people don't have that ability because they don't have enough experience. I mean, salespeople are usually they are able to sniff very quick if the people they are talking to know about sales or not. And so if you don't have their respect, and because you know how to drive them and you help them to achieve their results, then it's very, very difficult that they follow you. Okay. So, at the same time, even if you are the CEO and they respect you because you are the CEO and you pay their salary, at the end of the day, you are not in a condition to challenge them and to help them and to coach them. I always say that many times salespeople are like kids. They need to have a routine to follow. They need to have a cadence to follow, and they need some coaching. Coaching is an integral part of selling. I need coaching after many, many years in doing what I do. Anybody needs coaching, right? So the challenge is that many times they don't execute because they do not know the framework. And even if they had the framework, they really do not know how to make it operational every week by asking questions and providing value to the sellers because it's not just part of what they've done. That's really it's not a negative comment here. It is just if you are a CEO, you're very good at being a CEO. You're not good at being the sales leader. And if you're a sales leader, you're not good at being a CEO. It's like it's as simple like that. However, some people try to do it and then it doesn't work.
Exactly. And some people try to do both in the same time. At some point, it's going to break. You can't do both.
It's going to break, or in the best of situations, they hit the roof or they hit the ceiling. I suppose not the roof. And so what happens is they don't grow anymore. They are stalling the company.
Exactly. Talking about that, and this is where we navigate to the roles of sales leadership, because there's sales training, but there's not a lot of sales leadership out there that talk about sales leadership, because when you have a sales team, you need a sales leader to kind of help them navigate everything what you just said. So in your experience, what traits or behaviors do you think separate truly an effective sales leaders from the rest?
So I think there are three. First, you need to know selling. You must have been a salesperson in the past, and you have intimacy with the sales process. You understand how customers behave you know, you understand how to handle objections with customers. So you know everything that is around building up and running a sales organization. But that's one thing. So it's like, I say it, I call it like, if you want to do business in the United States, you must speak English. But it doesn't mean that if you speak English, you can do business, though, right? It's just a prerequisite, knowing that what I thought, the technical selling as a leader type of job. There are two other things. The other thing that are very important is, number one, you need to be able to create a future status and a future vision for the company you're working for. If you want to grow at a certain pace, you cannot make it happen operating business as usual. You need to change the way you operate, right? You need to change how you go to market. You change how which markets you are targeting. Sometimes how you present your offering, all this kind of stuff, right? So you have a clarity. You need to have clarity into the goal you want to achieve, and then being able to communicate this clarity to all the entire organization and your sellers, and sometimes even the CEO, because you are the voice of the customers at the CEO, right? So this ability of creating a future world becomes very crucial if you want to be a great sales leader. And the third, is also the ability of challenging the system. You need to be able to challenge the system. And if we did things always in the same way, and we are doing things because we always did them in that way, it's not the right answer. And if things are not happening in the way they're supposed to happen, you need to challenge the system. So, I mean, in other words, being a sales leader, being a yes man, not a good thing, especially because you have to be flexible. The world is changing very quickly. Things that are true today are not going to be true tomorrow anymore, right? So you need to be able to switch and to lead within the organization with that mentality of driving growth. That doesn't mean we are doing always the same thing.
Exactly. You know, talking about those three things that you shared, is it possible for an entrepreneur that has been in business to recreate themselves to think as a sales leader?
I think it's extremely difficult. That I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's extremely difficult because of lack of experience in their career. I mean, if they were a VP of sales in corporate, then they bought a company, okay, and then maybe they can, right? But still, there is a problem related to their time. It's not only the ability, you need also the time, right? So most of the people struggle with both time and ability. Some people understand very well selling. They are great salespeople, as they grew up the company because they were the first salesperson in the company, right? But unfortunately, their challenge is that they do not understand that managing a sales team is not selling. It's a different job, right? And it's a totally different job. This is why there are very few sales managers are sales managers that were salespeople before. I mean, usually the selection is very tight because you need to know how to sell, but you need to know many more things.
Exactly. And in your experience, Enrico, like, have you ever witnessed a situation that where strongly, like, a strong sales leadership led to a significant improvement despite the resistance, despite the, skepticism, all this other stuff from within the organization? Have you witnessed a situation where a strong sales leadership led to a huge improvement within the process?
Yeah, this is happening in the world of my customers, as it's happening in the world of the network sales acceleration I belong to. I've just had lunch last week with the CEO of a company here in Los Angeles, and they were my first customers in 2019. And I stayed with them 2 years, and then they went on their own. So I was talking to the CEO, and after year 5, the revenue is double. And they were a sizable company when I mean sizable, I mean more than $50 million. And when I met with the CEO the first time, and their implementation of sales organization was very, very far from perfect, right? So we did some drastic actions, and the results are happening. I always say to my potential customer, the following: when you put structure in the unstructured, there is only one way to go, up. There's only one.
That's awesome. That is awesome, man. And talking about one of your clients, I mean, the clients they've worked with, Enrico, what's the repetitive challenge that you see consistent? What's that one thing, like, here we go again, it's the same exact thing. Boom. What's the pattern that you see in your industry? The companies you've worked with, the same exact challenge always comes up when you start working with them.
Well, I think that what I answered before, it was really could answer this question, Hassan. The root cause of what I see, that is the revenue is not growing or the revenue is going down, is the lack of ability to drive a sales team to achieve sales goals. That's really what I experience. And if as a CEO, you're humble enough to recognize it and to say, hey, I try to solve it, but I cannot solve it because I do not know to solve it, then I think that's a great step for you to be ready to either to hire a fractional sales leader or hire a full-time sales leader and assign them, right? Now, one thing that is important is, and I'm going to do here a comparison, many of the situations I find are like the car in the mud. It's the car in the mud. So basically, they are in a situations that is very sticky, difficult to get out. To get out of a situation like this, you cannot use another car because the other car is going to get stuck in the mud like them. You need a tractor to get out. So you need highly skilled people that have seen it all to get out of a situation like that. And what I've seen is in the past, without the fractional world, companies were hiring managers at the level they can afford to pay. And many times these managers don't have enough experience to get out of those situations, right? Today, with the fractional world, you can hire people that you wouldn't be able to hire on a full-time basis, but on a part-time basis, they are the tractor. And by the way, the tractor, when you're out, can go away. You don't need a tractor. You just need to get out of the situation, right? So I would say the challenge is really they do not know how to get out. They do not, and they struggle. And many times, as I said, they are hopeless with personal implications. I mean, their life becomes very miserable because I mean they cannot sleep at night because the company is not growing, right? And basically they devote all of their time to the business, and so their personal life suffers. So all the implications, right? It becomes a negative spiral.
100%, man. Thank you for sharing that point, because that point and that what you just talked about, because you talked about the challenge, re-emphasizing the challenge, but then also that there's opportunities today to have a conversation with someone like you, Enrico, hire fractional and get the car out, get yourself out within a matter of weeks or possibly days, so that you have a system so that then you can actually implement and commit. Now, talking about the building accountability in sales processes, Some critics, some people argue that excessive focus on accountability in sales could lead to toxic work environment or could ruin the creativity and innovation. What's your thoughts about that?
Before I ask, by the way, getting out of the car, the mud, in days or weeks is really difficult. Usually it takes several months, and normally it takes one year. That's what I'm
100%.
seeing, right? But going back to your question, so a question, the last one. So sales is a mix of an art and a science. It cannot be only an art, and it cannot only be a science. So you need the science because you need to have a roadmap to execute. That is a roadmap based on metrics that you decide. Every business has their own metrics. And you need, obviously, to select a reasonable number of metrics. You're not going to measure everything, okay? but which are the key metrics for success. And they are like your roadmap that to follow, right? In that, then if you have to go from here to New York by car, right? And you know the roadmap is going to tell you that you need to do a certain number of miles and a certain number of days, right? But then it's not going to tell you if you want to go via Dallas or via Seattle. I mean, that is where you have to put your creativity, right? So that at the end of the day, there is no improvisation in sales. Okay. I say that when you go in front of customers, when you are a salesperson, 80% of your job is preparation, 20% is execution. You need to prepare when you talk to customers. Even if at the first calls, when you do proposals, you have to prepare. You need to be professional, right? And so you need to follow a certain approach that is not by chance, right? Now, if you want to be creative because you say, hey, you package the deal with creativity, that's absolutely possible, right? But at the end of the day, you need to know that to achieve your year-end goal, that is what is the contribution we are expecting from you in order to achieve the company goals, you will have to close a certain number of proposals. I mean, you cannot get out of that, right? And to get a certain number of proposals, you need to do a certain number of demos or qualification calls or customer visits, right? And so there are metrics that you cannot escape from because at the end of the day, your sales goal is the sum of a certain number of transactions.
That's well
So,
said, man.
right?
Thank you.
So you
Yeah.
need accountability. I mean, but accountability doesn't mean micromanagement.
Yeah, exactly.
No, because no one wants to be a micromanager.
No.
All right. So it's not micromanagement. It's just making sure that people execute on a path and they have a plan to execute on that path.
100%, man. That is so, so good, man, because I have to keep myself accountable. Myself accountable in different aspects of my fitness or my health. It's the same exact concept of doing it in sales and keeping it accountable, but also bringing the creativity within the process. So it's not like you just become accountable. No, you're bringing both of them together depending on the time.
Yeah, correct. You need both components. I mean, so many people will say that they don't want the accountability because they don't like to be accountable. That's the problem.
Okay, so that here we're talking about something really important. Where does that come from? Where does that process, like, why do they not want to be accountable?
Because there are people that don't want to be accountable. They that's the way they think or they operate, or they have been used to be part of a system that was not holding them accountable, and they liked it because I mean they could do everything that they wanted, right? And they were not responsible at the end of the year for a certain number, right?
Exactly.
So this that is not the recipe for success. The recipe for success. I mean, why the Navy SEALs are so good? Because they can rely on the other people on the team. Everybody knows exactly what they are doing, right?
Exactly.
And it's not, and you cannot miss. You cannot be late, or you cannot not know something to do a certain step. That is not acceptable.
Exactly.
It's the same concept here. I mean, we are fighting in the trenches. And you need to be able to rely on the team, but the team has also be able to rely on you.
100%, man. And just this, so every Monday for my team specifically, Enrico, I wanted to share this. Every Monday, we have a meeting in the morning based on what are the outcomes for the week. We're not talking about numbers really, but we go into outcomes for the week. What is the main outcome? And then at the end of the week, what is your win and what is your loss? Like, what did you do and what did you not do? Within that, there's a scorecard that we have. So beginning of the week, end of the week. I have a small team, Enrico. I don't have a big team. I have a team of like 5 people right now. So based on this conversation. So, I had to do that. One of the things that actually made me come back and not know what was working, what's not working is to look at the numbers and looking at who's doing the work, who's not doing the work. So I'm so happy that you shared that as in sales, because if it's in sales, it also applies to other things.
Yeah, and the other thing is if you have numbers and scorecards, then there is no debate. You can, I mean, sometimes, I mean, if you want a nice performing selling organization, you cannot have people that are not high performing.
Exactly.
It's impossible, right? So the question is, if you start at the beginning and you have who you have, then you need to put in place a system just to find out who is going to be part of that game or who is not. And who is not a personal decision, it's number driven. It's a business decision, right? Many times a challenge that the CEOs have is they have been working with some of their team for many, many years, right? And so they have personal relationship that sometimes cloud their vision of they should have on the team. But as soon as you put in place an accountability system, the people that don't want to be accountable will leave.
That is awesome, man. Thank you so much for sharing that point. And now we're moving into developing the resilience and commitment within the process that we just talked about. I want to talk more about the resilience. So resilience is often, is a key trait in sales, but some argue that it can lead to burnout or a culture of overwork. How do you ensure that the resilience within a company is nurtured in a healthy way within your sales teams?
So I could answer in different way. First, you as a sales executive or a CEO, you need to make sure that the targets that you assign are achievable. I'm not saying they are a slam dunk, but they have to be achievable, reasonably achievable, right? And if the market changes, either up or down, you need to change that and you need to be flexible. Salespeople want to be successful. If you give them impossible things to do, they leave. Okay. So first, start with making sure that the targets are achievable based on the territory they are, trend of them in the industry, the customer you assign. There are also parameters now that you have to define, right? It's not just you wake up one day, say we grow 20% year on year. And yes, based on what? It's a question. Okay. So first, there is a component related to the target being realistic. Okay. And then in addition to that, it's the job of the sales manager to support the sales people or the sellers and help them and coach them to achieve these goals based on a reasonably executable scorecard or roadmap. So the two things, it's not, it just go together. Okay, the role of the sales manager is really to ensure that the member of his team or her team know exactly what to do. There is clarity, okay, and there is support in the execution. Okay? Many times people are given a number and say, go and do it on your own. It's not going to happen. Okay, so at the end of the day, I say this: it's not only about numbers; it's how you play the game.
I love that.
If you play the game and you put everything possible in playing the game and you don't win, it's like you have won, right? If you win the game and you were lucky, you didn't win anything. You didn't win anything because you didn't learn anything through the process, all right? So it's important. So there is what I'm saying, there is dimension in achieving the numbers, but there is also a dimension, how are you achieving the numbers? Are you doing all the activities? Are you prospecting? Are you following the sales process? Are you responsive to customers? Are you communicating to customers in the right way? Right? Are you moving within the organization as a team member and not as a Rambo in the organization? So these are also parameters that are very important in judging the performance of a salesperson. The numbers are important, but they are not the only thing.
And when you talk about numbers, Enrico, some entrepreneurs or founders it's like, what do I track? What metrics do I track? I don't know what to track. There's so many different things. What do you say to that?
I think what I say is first you need to ask yourself, what is the behavior that you want to drive in your sales person or in your sales people? And these behaviors could be different person by person, right? So if the behavior is, I want you to find new customers, then you give them a metric around new customers, right? If the behavior is, I want you to grow the existing customers, you give them a growth of the revenue of the existing customers, right? So the behavior is going to drive the numbers in their quota letter or in their yearly agreement, in which I say, this is what I'm committing to, okay? So that's a high level. Then you need to define what are the key things that have to happen so that they achieve those numbers, right? So you can, like, for example, I mean, if you tell me, hey, I need you to achieve a certain number of revenue, okay? Then that number of revenue it translated how many transactions, how many customers, how many projects we want to close. And the projects are going to drive many proposals. The proposals are going to drive how many visits or qualification meetings or demos. It depends upon what they said, right? And so that's one dimension, right? About I call them sales metrics. In some situations, I find companies where there is not too much going on in marketing. So the salespeople is also responsible to do some prospecting. So in case they are responsible for prospecting, you will have to put in place some metrics about the execution of prospecting. So how many networking meetings they go to, how many prospects are going to visit, right, for the first time. So it's really depending. But at the end of the day, it's a reverse engineering process. You start from the goals, revenue goals, and then you build up all the rest.
There's a point that you just said here that I hope everyone caught as they're listening to this is the behavior. The behavior, because it goes both sides. Behavior as a leader yourself, if you're not good in sales, looking at what KPIs for yourself that behaves you to move forward, because the behavior is based on, like, connecting the behavior based on the KPI is so important, because that's what drives you. That's the perfect what you just said. And also it also transitions to your team. So basically you get to know, like, ask the salesperson based on their behavior, what drives them, so that you give them the right KPI for them specifically, because that's going to make them move forward. Is this resonating? Is this right, Enrico?
Yeah, it is. I mean, at the end, you need to have a team that does a certain task overall. The task is distributed among different people, and you select people with a certain profile to do certain different jobs, and you measure them differently.
That's awesome, man.
And that translates in a different behavior. I mean, you want to have people that like what they do, right? If you are not a person that likes to hunt, then giving you a business development job is not probably the best thing for you, and you will leave. Right? And if you like to hunt and they give you the account to farm, you will leave it because you're going to get bored. So you need to connect the profile of the person, the numbers, to the job description, to a profile of a person that has to have a certain behavior.
That's awesome, man. And talking about that, man, talking about taking ownership, how do you navigate, like, the balance between taking ownership of results and fostering, like, some people blame each other or blame aspect of that, but taking ownership, what's the specific thing they would say to that?
But I think blaming is not good. So blaming is like waiting. You don't control some other people behavior, right? You need to control. You can control your time. You control what you do. You can control who you are, right? So focus on that, right? No, don't focus. And obviously, if you need help, call it out. If things are missing, call it out. But at the end of the day, that is not the reason for your failure. That is not. So people that are blaming, usually that they are not good for a sales organization.
I love that. I'm just going to leave it there. That's just leave it there. Like what you just said, I'm not going to even say anything behind that. That's so good right there. So advice for aspiring sales leaders, specifically, in your experience, what are some unconventional or non-traditional skills that you believe are essential for success in sales leaders or sales leadership today?
So very often it happens that high-performing sales people or individual contributors are put in a position of a sales manager. And beyond understanding it's a different job and learning it, I think that you need to do a mental shift. And the mental shift is when you are an individual contributor, it's all about you and about your customers, about your commissions, and about your achieving quota, right? And when you become a sales manager, it's nothing about you. It is all about your team, right? You cannot be successful if they are not successful. So you need to think that your job is to enable the success of your people. It's a little bit like when you marry and you have children. It's the same thing, right? I mean, at the end of the day, and the more you grow, the more in the organization, because you can be a sales manager and you become a director or CPO sales, a CRO. All this means that then you shift from what is my team, what is all the rest of the company.
100%, man.
You go beyond your team, right?
100%.
And it's not about what you put in your pocket. It's about if the company is successful, you can put a lot of money in your pocket. If the company is not successful, it's not going to happen, right? So you always have to put things in that perspective. It's a maturing process, and some people, don't want to mature. So that's why they should stay always in individual contributor role.
Exactly. No, I'm 100% with you, and I'm glad that you said that point of view, because a lot of sales leaders that need to become sales leaders need to listen to this point, because that's so important, because they don't know like what they need to do or hire someone. So that's a really good point. And Enrico, if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice when starting out in sales and leadership, what would it be?
Yeah, I think so. What I would give myself is two things. Two things that come to mind. The first, 5 years ago, I read a book called The Go-Giver by Bob Burg. It gave me a totally different perspective on selling. It's a sales story. It's very profound. I wish I read that 30 years ago, not now. Okay. So that's important. And then second, as much as what I'm going to say could sound cocky, get a coach. Get a coach. You can have, if you're in a company, you can, maybe the companies can pay for the coach for you, but get the coach. Because as a sales manager, you are a coach. You cannot be a good coach without you having a coach.
100%. 100%. I love that, man. Closing thoughts and actionable insights from this conversation. Thank you so much for sharing this, man. But looking ahead with the trends or development, do you foresee shaping the future of sales leadership? Where is it, do you think, going, and how can inspiring leaders prepare for them? Like based on what's happening in the industry around sales, evolving, what do you think about that?
I think that the sales in the B2B world, I'm not talking about the B2C, but in the B2B world, the sales management role is a role that is going to exist for a long time, because we are going to have a sales team that needs someone to understand. The world is going to evolve. Technology is going to evolve. Years ago, you were using the CRM. Now you have to use the CRM. I'm sure that AI is going to do something similar in terms of impact, right? So, but at the end, if you sell value to your customers, you need to be able to develop a relationship and solve their problems, right? And you need to drive a team that makes that happen. So it will happen differently with different tools, different environment, but at the end of the day, people will need to be coached to achieve their goals. So the challenge will be different, the pace of execution will be all these things. But my opinion, what I saw as a challenge 30 years ago in achieving numbers, pretty much the same now. The tools are different, the country is different, the customers speak a different language, but the problems are the same.
That's awesome, man. Thank you so much for sharing that. Closing off the interview and the show here, if you could challenge one widely held belief or practice in the sales industry, what would it be?
Wow, I'm not prepared to answer this question. So let's see.
Whatever comes in mind.
Okay, one thing that I'm very passionate about. Being remote maximizes your productivity. In sales, my opinion, is not true, because you need to go to see your customers. If you don't, your competitors will go to see your customers. And your customers, if you sell again value, will buy because of the relationship you have established with them. You cannot beat a face-to-face relationship. The world today is going to virtual. I don't think it's going to be a solution For sales, I believe that hybrid can work very well, right? But go to see your customers. That's really what I ask people to do. That is my sales pitch. You need to go to see your customers.
That is well said.
Don't believe that because they see you on Zoom or on Teams that you are memorable.
100%. Enrico, thank you so much for your time and insights for being on the show today. Really appreciate the insights and specific journey that we took today, because I think this answers a lot of the challenges that of the customers that I work with, and also leaders that are in the between of becoming a sales leader or becoming more of the visionary, because these are two different things, man. So
Right.
thank you so much for being on the show, man. Appreciate your time. And to our listeners, be sure to connect with Enrico. Enrico, where can they connect with you?
I think that the best way is via email. My email is eparodi@salesacceleration.com, and my phone number is 310-503-9775.
That's
Thank you
awesome.
so much for the opportunity.
Absolutely, man. And also, you're on LinkedIn, and you also have a great newsletter that you send out a lot. So people could also be a part of the newsletter. Just connect with Enrico via LinkedIn. You could DM him. And until next time, stay inspired and keep striving for success. Thank you so much, Enrico. And that's the show.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you, man. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
And that brings us to a close of another episode on the Hassan Bash Show. Thank you for dedicating time to your growth and progress with us today. Each episode is a step toward not just reaching, but exceeding your potential. To ensure you never miss out on another episode or these insights, subscribe to the podcast. For a deeper dive and exclusive content that furthers your journey, sign up for our newsletter at hassanbash.com. That's HassanBash.com. And for a continuous flow of inspiration, make sure to follow us across our socials. Your support through sharing our podcast can inspire and empower others in their journey of progress. So let's build a community of growth together. Until our paths cross again, remember, every day is an opportunity to learn, to grow, and move forward. Stay curious, stay inspired, and above all, keep progressing. I'm Hassan signing off. Here's to your journey of endless growth.